Elena Rossi thought serving coffee at midnight would be the most dangerous part of her shift, until she spotted the city's most feared Mafia boss sitting 3 booths away from his own assassins. In that split second, she had a choice: mind her own business like every smart person would, or whisper 2 words that would save his life and destroy everything she'd worked to protect. What she didn't know was that Nico Bellanti had already lost the 2 people who mattered most to him, and saving his life would make her and her mute 7-year-old brother the targets of a vengeful woman who wouldn't stop until she'd taken everything from him. Again. But when bullets started flying and Elena's world exploded into chaos, she discovered that sometimes the most dangerous man in the city might be the only one who could keep her family safe. Because in a world where loyalty is paid for in blood, Elena was about to learn that saving someone's life means they owe you everything, and their enemies will do anything to collect that debt. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is about to prove that one moment of courage can change everything. The smell of burnt coffee and grease hung in the air like a thick blanket. Elena wiped down the same table for the 3rd time, her tired eyes scanning the empty diner. The clock above the kitchen door showed 11:47 p.m., almost closing time. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and counted the crumpled bills in her apron pocket. $32, not enough. It was never enough. Her phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Chen next door. "Luca asleep. Don't worry." Elena's chest tightened. Luca, her 7-year-old brother who hadn't spoken a word since the accident 6 months ago. The same accident that took their parents and left Elena scrambling to keep them both afloat. The bell above the door chimed. 4 men walked in, their heavy boots loud against the checkered floor. They moved like they owned the place. Elena had seen their type before, the kind of men who made trouble wherever they went. "Coffee," the biggest one grunted, sliding into a corner booth. His friends followed, their eyes darting around the room like they were looking for something, or someone. Elena poured 4 cups, her hand steady despite the warning bells going off in her head. She'd learned to trust her gut living in this neighborhood. These men weren't here for late-night pie. The door chimed again. This time, a single man entered. Tall, dark hair, expensive suit that didn't belong in Tony's diner. Elena knew that face from the newspapers. Everyone in the city did. Nico Bellanti. Her breath caught. The most feared man in the state just sat down 3 booths away from 4 guys who looked like they'd rather see him dead. Nico ordered black coffee without looking at the menu. His voice was calm, controlled, but Elena noticed how his eyes swept the room, how his shoulders stayed tense under that perfect suit. She glanced at the corner booth. One of the men had his hand inside his jacket. Another kept checking his watch. The 3rd whispered something urgent into his phone. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd seen enough crime movies to know what this looked like. But this wasn't a movie. This was real life, and she was caught in the middle. She filled Nico's cup, her hands surprisingly steady. He looked up at her with dark eyes that seemed to see everything. For a moment, their gazes locked. Something passed between them. Recognition of danger, maybe. Or just 2 people who'd seen too much of the world's ugliness. "Anything else?" she asked quietly. "No." His voice was rough, like gravel. "Thank you." Elena walked back toward the kitchen, but her eyes stayed on the corner booth. The biggest man nodded to his friends. They all stood at once. Time slowed. Elena saw the glint of metal under the man's jacket, saw Nico's reflection in the window, unaware of what was coming, saw her own terrified face staring back. She didn't think, she just moved. "Don't talk," she whispered as she passed Nico's table, barely moving her lips. "Walk to the kitchen. Now." Nico's head snapped up. For a split second, surprise flashed across his face. Then his expression went cold and hard. Without a word, he stood and followed her toward the back of the diner. The first gunshot exploded like thunder. Elena grabbed Nico's arm and pulled him through the swinging kitchen doors. Plates crashed to the floor. More shots rang out, the sound deafening in the small space. "Back exit," Elena gasped, pointing toward the alley door. They ran. Elena's sneakers slipped on the greasy floor, but Nico's strong hand kept her upright. Behind them, men shouted. Glass shattered. The alley was dark and cold. Elena's lungs burned as they ducked behind a dumpster. A bullet sparked off the brick wall inches from her head. Nico shoved her down, covering her with his body. His suit jacket was soft against her cheek, and she could smell his cologne mixed with the sharp scent of fear sweat. "Stay down," he ordered. More gunfire. Then silence. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. "You're hurt," Nico said. Elena looked down. Blood soaked through her white uniform shirt. Her arm throbbed, but the pain felt distant, unreal. "It's nothing," she whispered. Nico's jaw tightened. He pulled a business card from his pocket and pressed it into her palm. "If you need anything, anything at all." The sirens were almost here. Nico stood, straightened his tie, and disappeared into the shadows like he'd never been there at all. Elena stared at the card in her shaking hand. Plain white, expensive paper. Just a name and phone number in simple black letters. The police found her sitting in the alley, holding a blood-soaked dish rag to her arm. They asked 100 questions, but Elena kept her answers simple. Wrong place, wrong time. She didn't know who the men were or why they started shooting. She never mentioned Nico Bellanti. By the time she got home, the sun was rising over the city. Their apartment building looked even shabbier in the morning light. Elena climbed 3 flights of stairs, each step making her wounded arm throb worse. Mrs. Chen met her at the door, worry creasing her kind face. "Elena, what happened?" "Kitchen accident," Elena lied. "Cut myself on a broken plate." Luca sat at their tiny kitchen table, dark hair sticking up in all directions. His big brown eyes, so much like their father's, went wide when he saw the bandage on her arm. Elena knelt beside his chair. "I'm okay, sweetie. Just clumsy." Luca reached out with one small finger and gently touched the white gauze. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, but no words came. They never did anymore. Elena's heart cracked a little more. "How about pancakes?" Luca nodded and gave her a tiny smile. It was the most emotion she'd seen from him in weeks. While the pancakes cooked, Elena pulled Nico's card from her pocket. She should throw it away. Getting involved with a man like him was the last thing she and Luca needed. They had enough problems. But she thought about those dark eyes, the way he'd covered her body with his own when the bullets started flying. She thought about the careful way he'd spoken to her, like she mattered. Elena opened the kitchen drawer and slipped the card under a stack of unpaid bills. Just in case. That night, she went back to work. Tony, the diner's owner, had replaced the broken windows and scrubbed the blood off the floor. Everything looked normal, but Elena felt eyes on her all evening. A black car drove past the diner 3 times. The same 4-door sedan with tinted windows. Elena tried to tell herself it was nothing, but her hand shook when she poured coffee. At closing time, she found a note taped to her locker. "Mind your own business." The paper was expensive, like Nico's card, but the message was written in red ink that looked too much like blood. Elena crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then she took it out and smoothed it flat. Evidence, maybe. Or just proof that she was in more trouble than she'd thought. The walk home felt different. Shadows seemed darker. Every footstep behind her sounded too close. Elena kept her keys ready, checking over her shoulder every few steps. Their building was quiet, too quiet. Elena climbed the stairs faster than usual, her heart pounding in her throat. The apartment door stood open. Elena's blood turned to ice. She pushed the door wider and stepped inside. Furniture was overturned, drawers pulled out and dumped on the floor. Someone had torn their small home apart. Luca? Her voice came out as a whisper, a sound from the bedroom closet. Elena ran, tripping over scattered books and broken picture frames. Luca sat huddled in the corner of the closet, arms wrapped around his knees. Tears streaked down his pale cheeks, but he made no sound. Even crying, her little brother was silent. "It's okay," Elena whispered, pulling him into her arms. "I'm here. You're safe." But they weren't safe. Someone had carved words into their bedroom wall with a knife. "You should have stayed quiet." Elena stared at the jagged letters, her stomach twisting into knots. This wasn't random. This was about last night, about Nico Bellanti and the choice she'd made to help him. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. Elena's breath caught. She grabbed Luca and backed toward the far corner of the bedroom, looking around for something she could use as a weapon. Loud knocking at the front door. Not the police. They would have announced themselves. "Elena Rossi?" A deep voice called out. Not familiar, but not threatening either. "My name is Rafa. I work for Mr. Bellanti. He sent me to check on you." Elena didn't move. Luca trembled in her arms. "The door's open," she called back, her voice stronger than she felt. "But we're staying here." Footsteps entered the apartment. More than one person. Elena heard the crunch of broken glass, the scrape of overturned furniture being moved. A different voice now, one that made her pulse quicken. "Elena." Nico Bellanti stood in her bedroom doorway, his expensive suit replaced by dark jeans and a black sweater. He looked dangerous and worried at the same time. His eyes swept the destroyed room, the threatening message on the wall. His jaw clenched so tight Elena could see the muscle jumping. "This is my fault," he said quietly. Elena stood, still holding Luca. "What do you want?" "To keep you alive." Nico's gaze softened when it landed on Luca. "Both of you." Two other men appeared behind him. One was older, gray-haired, with kind eyes that reminded Elena of her father. The other was younger, built like a boxer, with scars on his hands. "This is Rafa," Nico said, nodding toward the gray-haired man. "And Tony." He paused. "Not the diner Tony. Different Tony." Elena almost smiled despite everything. "How many Tonys are there in your life?" "Too many." The corner of Nico's mouth twitched. "Pack whatever you need. You can't stay here." "I'm not going anywhere with you." Elena lifted her chin. "I don't even know you." "You saved my life." Nico stepped closer, his voice gentle. "Now someone wants to hurt you because of it. I won't let that happen." "I can take care of myself." "Can you take care of him?" Nico nodded toward Luca. The question hit like a slap. Elena looked down at her little brother, still clinging to her shirt. His dark eyes were huge with fear. "The people who did this," Nico continued, "they're not going away. They're not going to forgive and forget. They want to send a message." "What kind of message?" Nico's expression went dark. "That helping me gets you killed." Elena's legs felt weak. She sank onto the edge of the bed, Luca still in her arms. "This is insane. I just told you to walk to the kitchen." "You saved my life," Nico repeated. "In their world, that makes you my ally, which makes you their enemy." "I'm not part of your world." "You are now." The truth of it hit Elena like a physical blow. By making that split-second decision to warn him, she dragged herself and Luca into something they didn't understand. Something that could get them killed. Gunshots cracked in the distance. Rafa's head snapped up. "We need to go. Now." Nico moved toward Elena, his hand extended. "Please, let me protect you." Elena looked around their destroyed home, at the hateful words carved into the wall, at Luca's terrified face pressed against her shoulder. She took Nico's hand. His fingers were warm and calloused, stronger than they looked. As he helped her stand, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. It should have scared her more than the threats and the bullets. A man like Nico Bellanti wasn't safety. He was danger wrapped in an expensive suit and a gentle voice. But when more gunshots echoed from the street below, Elena didn't let go of his hand. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere they can't find you." Elena grabbed Luca's favorite stuffed animal and a change of clothes. Everything else could be replaced. Everything except the two people who mattered most to her. And now, somehow, that included the man whose life she'd saved. As they left the apartment, Elena looked back one more time at the home she and Luca had shared. It wasn't much, but it had been theirs. Now even that was gone. Nico's hand squeezed hers gently. When she looked up at him, his dark eyes were full of something that might have been regret. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for all of this." Elena nodded. She was sorry too. Sorry for the choices that had brought them here. Sorry for the fear in Luca's eyes. Sorry for the mess her life had become. But as they walked down the stairs toward whatever came next, Elena realized she wasn't sorry for saving him. Even knowing what it would cost, she'd do it again. Some choices were worth the consequences, even when those consequences might kill you. The mansion rose from the darkness like something from a movie. Elena pressed her face to the car window, staring at the iron gates, the long driveway lined with perfect trees, the house that seemed to go on forever. "This is where you live," she whispered. Nico sat beside her in the back seat, Luca asleep between them. "It's safe," he said simply. The car stopped in front of massive wooden doors. Elena had never seen anything like this place. Even in the dim light, she could tell it cost more than she'd make in 10 lifetimes. "I don't belong here," she said. "Tonight, you do." Rafa opened the car door. Elena carefully lifted Luca, trying not to wake him. The little boy stirred but didn't open his eyes. A woman appeared in the doorway, older, with silver hair and kind eyes. She wore a simple dress and an apron, like she'd been cooking. "Mrs. Donatella," Nico said, "this is Elena and Luca." "Welcome, dear." Mrs. Donatella's voice was warm, with a slight accent. "You both look exhausted." Elena followed her into the house, her sneakers squeaking on marble floors. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they disappeared into shadows. Everything was perfect, expensive, untouchable. "The blue room is ready," Mrs. Donatella said softly. "The boy can sleep with you, or there's a smaller bed next door." "With me," Elena said quickly. "He needs to stay with me." Mrs. Donatella's eyes were understanding. "Of course." They climbed a staircase wide enough for 6 people. Elena's legs felt like rubber after the longest day of her life. Bullet wounds, destroyed apartments, and now this. A palace that made her feel smaller than ever. Here we are. Mrs. Donatella opened a door to reveal a bedroom bigger than Elena's entire apartment. The bed could have slept 4 people. Heavy curtains covered windows that probably looked out over gardens Elena couldn't even imagine. "There are clothes in the dresser," Mrs. Donatella continued. "Bathroom through that door. If you need anything at all, just press this button." She showed Elena a small device on the nightstand. "Someone will come right away." Elena nodded, though she couldn't imagine pressing a button to summon servants like some kind of princess. "Try to sleep," Mrs. Donatella said gently. "You're safe here." After she left, Elena stood in the middle of the huge room, still holding Luca. Everything felt unreal. 12 hours ago, she'd been serving coffee and counting tips. Now she was in a mansion belonging to the most dangerous man in the city. She laid Luca on the enormous bed. He looked so small against the fancy pillows. His dark hair fell across his forehead the same way their fathers used to. "We're okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it. "Everything's going to be okay." Luca opened his eyes and looked around the strange room, his face scrunched with confusion. "I know it's different," Elena said, "but it's just for tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do." Luca sat up and pointed toward the door. "You want to leave?" "We can't, sweetie. Remember the bad men who came to our house? We have to stay here where it's safe." Luca's eyes filled with tears. He shook his head and pointed again. Elena's heart broke. Her little brother had been through enough. First losing their parents, then tonight's terror, and now sleeping in a stranger's house. It was too much for anyone, especially a 7-year-old who couldn't even say what he was feeling. "How about we explore a little?" Elena suggested. "Just to see where everything is." Luca nodded eagerly. Elena took his hand and opened the bedroom door. The hallway stretched in both directions, lined with paintings that probably cost more than cars. Their footsteps echoed despite Elena's attempts to walk quietly. They found a library with books from floor to ceiling, a room full of exercise equipment, and something that might have been a ballroom. Elena had only seen places like this in movies. Voices drifted from somewhere ahead. Elena hesitated, but Luca tugged her forward. They followed the sound to a kitchen bigger than most restaurants. Nico stood near a huge island, still in his dark jeans and sweater. He was talking quietly with Rafa while Mrs. Donatella stirred something on the stove. "Can't sleep?" Nico asked when he saw them. Elena felt her cheeks warm. "Sorry, we were just looking around." "Nothing to apologize for." Nico's voice was gentler than before. "Hungry?" As if on cue, Elena's stomach growled loudly. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. "Sit," Mrs. Donatella commanded, pointing to stools at the island. "I'll make eggs." Elena lifted Luca onto a stool and sat beside him. The kitchen smelled like garlic and herbs, normal smells, even in this impossible place. "How's your arm?" Nico asked. Elena had almost forgotten about the bullet graze. "It's fine." "Let me see." Before Elena could protest, Nico was examining her bandage with gentle fingers. His touch sent unexpected warmth up her arm. "This needs to be changed," he said. "Mrs. Donatella?" "Already got supplies." The older woman produced a first aid kit from somewhere. "I raised 6 boys. I know about cuts." Elena sat still while Mrs. Donatella carefully cleaned and rebandaged her wound. Nico watched with an expression she couldn't read. "Thank you," Elena said when it was done. "You saved his life," Mrs. Donatella replied with a meaningful look at Nico. "It's the least we can do." Scrambled eggs appeared in front of them, along with toast and fresh fruit Elena probably couldn't afford at the grocery store. Luca ate like he was starving, which he probably was after their terrible day. "What happens now?" Elena asked. Nico exchanged glances with Rafa. "We're working on that." "That's not an answer." "The people who threatened you," Nico said carefully, "they're connected to an old problem of mine. Someone I thought was finished making trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Another look between the men. Elena was getting tired of being treated like a child. "A woman named Viviana Moretti," Nico finally said. "She blames me for her brother's death." "Did you kill her brother?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Mrs. Donatella stopped stirring. Rafa's hand moved slightly, probably toward a hidden weapon. Nico met Elena's eyes directly. "Yes." Elena should have been scared, should have grabbed Luca and run screaming from the house. Instead, she found herself asking, "Why?" "Because he killed my wife and daughter." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She looked at this powerful, dangerous man and saw something she recognized. Grief so deep, it changed everything about who you were. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Nico nodded once, his jaw tight. Viviana doesn't see it that way. She thinks I'm a murderer who needs to pay. And now she wants to hurt us to hurt you. Yes. Elena looked down at Luca, who was carefully cutting his toast, into perfect squares the way he always did. Her little brother didn't deserve any of this. Neither of them did. But they were here now, in this strange, beautiful house with this complicated man who spoke about death like other people talked about the weather. "How long do we have to stay?" Elena asked. "Until it's safe." "When will that be?" Nico's expression grew darker. "When Viviana Moretti is no longer a problem." Elena didn't ask what that meant. She was pretty sure she didn't want to know. After they finished eating, Mrs. Donatella shooed them all out of the kitchen. Elena started to head back toward their room, but Luca pulled toward the back door. "He wants to see outside," Elena explained. "The garden's safe," Nico said. "Motion sensors, cameras, guards. Nothing gets in without us knowing." They stepped onto a stone patio that overlooked grounds Elena couldn't see the end of in the darkness. Lights illuminated pathways between perfect flower beds and what looked like a small pond. Luca let go of Elena's hand and walked toward the pond, fascinated by the sound of moving water. "He likes water," Elena said. "Before the accident, he used to spend hours at the lake behind our house." "What happened?" Nico asked quietly. Elena had told the story so many times to doctors, social workers, grief counselors, but somehow it felt different talking to Nico. "Car crash. Dad fell asleep driving home from work. Hit a tree." She wrapped her arms around herself. Luca was in the back seat. He saw everything. "And you?" "I was at college. Got the call at 2 a.m. Elena's voice broke slightly. "By the time I got to the hospital, they were already gone." Nico stepped closer. "How old are you?" 28. Elena laughed, but it sounded bitter. "Old enough to be his guardian, not old enough to know what I'm doing." "You're doing fine." "Am I?" 6 months later and he still won't talk, won't play with other kids, won't leave my side for more than 5 minutes. Elena watched Luca crouch beside the pond. "I'm all he has left, and I'm completely lost." "He's lucky to have you." Elena turned to look at Nico. In the soft garden lights, he looked younger, less dangerous. "How old were they? Your wife and daughter?" Sophia was 29, Isabella was 4. The same age Luca had been when their parents died. Elena's throat tightened. "She had dark hair like his," Nico continued, nodding toward Luca, "always getting into everything, always asking questions." "What was she like? Your wife?" Nico was quiet for so long Elena thought he wouldn't answer. "Strong," he finally said. "Stronger than me in all the ways that mattered. She saw good in people even when they didn't deserve it." "Like me with you?" Nico looked surprised. "You think I don't deserve it?" Elena considered the question seriously. "I think you're more complicated than good or bad." Most people don't see it that way. Most people don't know what it's like to lose everything and keep going anyway. Something shifted in Nico's expression. For just a moment, he looked less like a dangerous criminal and more like a man carrying too much pain. Luca came running back, his eyes bright with excitement. He tugged on Elena's hand and pointed toward the pond. "Fish?" she guessed. Luca nodded enthusiastically and grabbed Nico's hand too, pulling them both toward the water. Elena was surprised when Nico didn't resist. They spent 20 minutes watching goldfish swim lazy circles, while Luca made silent requests for them to notice different ones. He pointed out the biggest fish, the smallest, The one with the most interesting colors. He's very observant, Nico said. Always has been. Even before. Elena trailed off. Before he stopped talking. Yeah. Nico crouched to Luca's level. You like the fish? Luca nodded and pointed to a bright orange one. That one's my favorite, too, Nico said seriously. His name is George. Luca's eyes widened. He pointed to a smaller yellow fish. That's George's wife, Gladys. And those 3 little ones are their kids. For the first time in months, Elena saw Luca smile. Really smile, not just the sad little attempts he'd been making since the accident. How do you know their names? Elena asked. I named them, Nico said simply. Gets lonely out here sometimes. Elena looked around the massive estate. She bet it did get lonely. All this space and beauty, but no one to share it with. Time for bed, she said finally, though she was reluctant to break the peaceful moment. Luca pointed to the biggest fish one more time, then waved goodbye to the pond. As they walked back toward the house, Elena realized something had shifted. Luca was walking between her and Nico, holding both their hands like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her little brother, who barely trusted anyone anymore, was already starting to trust the most dangerous man Elena had ever met. She should have been worried about that. Instead, watching Nico patiently answer Luca's silent questions about the garden, Elena found herself wondering if maybe, just maybe, they'd found exactly what they both needed, even if neither of them was ready to admit it yet. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through windows bigger than her old apartment's front door. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back. The shooting, the threats, Nico Bellanti's mansion. Luca was already awake, sitting by the window and staring out at the garden. He turned when he heard her move and pointed outside with excitement. What do you see? Elena asked, joining him at the window. Luca pressed his small hand against the glass and pointed more urgently. Elena followed his gaze and gasped. The gardens were even more beautiful in daylight. Perfectly trimmed hedges created pathways between flower beds, bursting with colors Elena couldn't even name. The pond sparkled in the morning sun, and beyond it stretched green lawn that seemed to go on forever. It's like a fairy tale, she whispered. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, Elena called. Mrs. Donatella entered with a breakfast tray. Good morning, dears. I thought you might be hungry. The smell of fresh pancakes made Elena's mouth water. She couldn't remember the last time someone had brought her breakfast in bed. Actually, she was pretty sure no one ever had. You don't have to wait on us, Elena protested. Nonsense. You're guests. Mrs. Donatella set the tray on a small table by the window. Mr. Bellanti had to step out, but he'll be back this afternoon. He wanted me to show you around, help you feel comfortable. Elena looked down at her wrinkled uniform from yesterday. I should probably change first. Already taken care of. Mrs. Donatella opened the dresser drawers. Clothes in your size and smaller ones for the boy. Mr. Bellanti is very thorough. Elena stared at the neat stacks of clothing, jeans, sweaters, even underwear and socks, all in exactly her size. How did he know? Mrs. Donatella smiled knowingly. He has his ways. After breakfast and showers, Elena and Luca followed Mrs. Donatella on a tour of the house. Elena tried not to gawk, but it was impossible. Every room was perfect, like a museum where real people somehow lived. This was Isabella's playroom, Mrs. Donatella said softly, opening a door Elena had missed the night before. Elena's breath caught. The room was frozen in time, toys still arranged on shelves, a small table set for a tea party, drawings stuck to the walls with magnets. Everything waiting for a little girl who would never come home. Luca let go of Elena's hand and walked slowly around the room. He stopped in front of a dollhouse that was an exact replica of the mansion they were standing in. She loved that dollhouse, Mrs. Donatella said. Mr. Bellanti had it custom made for her 4th birthday. Elena's eyes burned. She could picture a dark-haired little girl playing house, arranging tiny furniture and making up stories about the tiny family inside. Luca touched the dollhouse gently, then looked back at Mrs. Donatella with a question in his eyes. "You can play with it," she said kindly. "Isabella would have liked sharing." For the next hour, Luca explored the playroom while Elena and Mrs. Donatella sat in comfortable chairs nearby. It was the most relaxed Elena had seen her brother since the accident. "He's a sweet boy," Mrs. Donatella observed. "He used to talk all the time," Elena said. "Constant questions, made-up songs, stories about everything he saw. Now," she trailed off. "Grief affects children differently. Some cry, some get angry, some go quiet." Mrs. Donatella's voice was gentle. "He'll find his voice again when he's ready." "What if he's not? What if I failed him so badly that he never speaks again?" "You haven't failed anyone." Mrs. Donatella reached over and squeezed Elena's hand. "You're keeping him safe, loving him, giving him what he needs. That's all anyone can do." Elena wiped her eyes. "Sorry, I don't usually fall apart on strangers." "I'm not a stranger. I'm someone who cares about people Mr. Bellanti cares about." "He doesn't care about us. We're just a problem he needs to solve." Mrs. Donatella's eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. "Is that what you think?" Before Elena could answer, Luca appeared beside her chair holding a small toy horse. He held it out to Elena, then pointed toward the window. "You want to see the real horses?" Mrs. Donatella asked. Luca nodded eagerly. "Horses!" Elena squeaked. "Mr. Bellanti keeps 3 in the stable. Isabella used to feed them carrots every morning." They made their way outside, Luca practically bouncing with excitement. The stable was hidden behind a grove of trees, as perfect and expensive-looking as everything else on the property. 3 horses stood in a paddock, beautiful animals that probably cost more than Elena made in a year. Luca pressed against the fence, eyes wide with wonder. A man emerged from the stable, tall, weathered, with kind eyes and dirt under his fingernails. "This is Marcus," Mrs. Donatella said. "He takes care of the horses." "Visitors!" Marcus grinned, wiping his hands on a rag. "Haven't had visitors in a long time. Which one do you like, son?" Luca pointed to a gentle-looking brown horse with a white stripe down her nose. "Good choice. That's Bella. She's the sweetest one." Marcus pulled a carrot from his pocket. "Want to give her a treat?" Luca looked back at Elena for permission. She nodded, her heart tight. This was the most interested Luca had been in anything since their parents died. Marcus showed Luca how to hold his hand flat so Bella could take the carrot safely. The horse was gentle, nuzzling Luca's palm after the treat was gone. For just a moment, Luca's face lit up with pure joy. "He's a natural," Marcus said to Elena. "Some kids are afraid of horses, but this one's got no fear." Elena watched her brother stroke Bella's nose with careful fingers. "He's been afraid of everything lately. This is the first time in months I've seen him truly happy." "Animals have a way of healing hurts we can't see," Marcus said wisely. "If you're staying a while, bring him by any time. Bella could use the company." As they walked back to the house, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Maybe this strange situation wasn't completely terrible. Maybe there were good things here too, things that could help Luca heal. "Mrs. Donatella," she said as they reached the patio, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What's he really like?" "Nico, I mean, when he's not being the scary Mafia boss everyone talks about." Mrs. Donatella was quiet for a moment, watching Luca chase a butterfly across the garden. "Broken," she said finally. "Like you. Like the boy. But he keeps going anyway. keeps protecting people, keeps hoping things will get better somehow. Even though his family is gone, especially because his family is gone. He couldn't save them, so now he saves everyone else he can. Elena thought about that as they went inside for lunch. A man driven by grief to protect others, even when protecting them put him in danger. It made sense in a sad way. They were finishing sandwiches in the sunny breakfast room when car doors slammed outside. Elena tensed, but Mrs. Donatella looked relaxed. "He's back," she said simply. Footsteps in the hallway, then Nico appeared in the doorway. He looked tired, and there was something grim in his expression that made Elena's stomach clench. "How was your morning?" he asked, but his voice was strained. "Good. Luca met the horses." Elena studied his face. "What's wrong?" Nico glanced at Luca, who was drawing pictures on a napkin. "Can we talk? Privately?" Elena's heart sank. Bad news. It had to be bad news. They stepped into the hallway while Mrs. Donatella distracted Luca with promises of cookies. "Your apartment building," Nico said, without preamble. "It burned down this morning." Elena's legs went weak. "What?" "No one was hurt. The fire department thinks it was arson." Nico's jaw was tight. "Someone wanted to make sure you couldn't go back." Elena leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. Their home was gone. Everything they had left of their parents, photos, keepsakes, Luca's favorite toys that hadn't fit in the bag they'd grabbed. "I'm sorry," Nico said softly. "Why?" Elena's voice cracked. "Why would they do that?" "To send a message, to make sure you understand this isn't going away." "How long?" Elena asked. "How long do we have to stay here?" Nico was quiet for too long. When he finally spoke, his words felt like stones in her chest. "I don't know." Elena closed her eyes. A day, maybe 2, that she could handle. But this was starting to sound permanent, and she couldn't live in someone else's house forever. She had a job, responsibilities. Luca needed stability, routine, normal life. "I need some air," she said. She walked outside to the garden, needing space to think. Everything was falling apart. Her life, her independence, her ability to take care of Luca the way their parents would have wanted. Footsteps behind her. She expected Mrs. Donatella, but when she turned, it was Nico. "I know this is hard," he said. "Do you?" Elena's frustration bubbled over. "Do you know what it's like to lose everything twice? To have your whole life turned upside down by one stupid decision?" "Yes," Nico said quietly. "I do." His simple honesty deflated her anger. Of course he knew. He'd lost his wife and daughter, everything that mattered to him. "I'm sorry," Elena said. "That was unfair." "No, it wasn't. You have every right to be angry." They stood in silence, watching butterflies move between the flowers. Elena's life had become something from a movie. Too strange to be real, too dangerous to be safe. "What happens if we can't go back?" she asked. "Then you stay? Here as long as you need to." "I can't be your charity case forever." "You're not a charity case." Nico turned to face her fully. "You're someone who risked her life to save mine, someone who matters." The way he said it made Elena's chest tight. She looked into his dark eyes and saw something that scared her more than bullets or threats. She saw a man who might actually care about her. "Luca likes it here," she said mostly to herself. "He can stay as long as he wants. Both of you can." "What about your life? This can't be what you planned." Nico's smile was sad. "I stopped making plans 3 years ago." A shout from the house broke the moment. Elena's blood turned cold. That was Mrs. Donatella's voice, scared and urgent. They ran toward the house, Nico pulling a gun Elena hadn't known he was carrying. The front door stood wide open, and Elena could hear Mrs. Donatella calling Luca's name. He was right here, Mrs. Donatella said when they burst into the breakfast room. I turned around to get cookies from the kitchen, and when I came back, he was gone. Elena's world tilted. Luca! They searched every room, calling his name. Nothing. Elena's panic grew with each empty space. The horses, she gasped. He wanted to see Bella again. They ran to the stable, Elena's heart hammering against her ribs. Please let him be safe. Please let him just be playing with the horses. Marcus met them halfway, his face grim. Found something you need to see. He led them to the back of the stable, where the fence had been cut. A piece of paper was tied to the wire. Nico read it, his face going white. He handed it to Elena without a word. We have the boy. You have 24 hours to decide what matters more, his life or yours. Come alone to the old warehouse on 5th Street at midnight, or he dies. No police, no backup, no tricks. Just you. Elena's knees gave out. She sank to the ground, the paper fluttering from her hands. They had Luca, her little brother who was afraid of everything, who needed her to keep him safe. And now he was gone, taken by people who would hurt him to get to Nico. I have to go, she whispered. I have to get him back. No. Nico's voice was hard. It's a trap. I don't care. He's all I have left. Elena tried to stand, but Nico caught her arms. Listen to me. If you go there, they'll kill you both. This isn't about saving Luca. It's about hurting me. Then what do we do? Elena's voice broke. How do we get him back? Nico's expression went cold and deadly. We get him back my way. Elena looked into his eyes and saw something that should have terrified her. Instead, it filled her with fierce hope. She saw a man who would burn down the world to protect the people he cared about. And somehow, impossibly, that now included her and Luca. Elena paced the living room like a caged animal. Every few minutes, she checked the clock. 6:47 p.m. Luca had been gone for 5 hours. 5 hours was forever when you were 7 years old and scared. Sit down, Mrs. Donatella said gently. You're going to wear a hole in the floor. I can't sit. I can't think about anything except what they might be doing to him. Elena's voice cracked. He doesn't understand what's happening. He can't even ask for help. Nico sat at a desk covered with papers and phones, talking quietly to people whose names Elena didn't recognize. Every conversation sounded serious and dangerous. Any word? Elena asked for the 100th time. We're close, Nico said without looking up. Rafa found the car they used. We're tracking it now. Elena wanted to scream. Close wasn't good enough. Close wouldn't bring Luca home safe. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elena's heart stopped. Answer it, Nico said sharply. Elena's hand shook as she pressed the button. Hello? Elena? The voice was small, terrified, familiar. Luca! Elena's knees went weak with relief. Baby, are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm scared. Luca's voice was barely a whisper, but he was talking. After 6 months of silence, her little brother was finally talking. I know, sweetie. I'm going to come get you, okay? Just tell me where you are. A different voice came on the line, female, cold, angry. He's fine for now, but that changes if you don't follow my instructions exactly. What do you want? You know what I want. Midnight, the warehouse, alone. Please, Elena begged. He's just a little boy. He hasn't done anything wrong. Neither had my brother, but Nico Bellanti killed him anyway. The woman's voice was full of hate. Now he gets to know what it feels like to lose someone he cares about. He doesn't care about us. We're just strangers who got caught up in your war. Are you? Because he spent an awful lot of time and resources keeping you safe for strangers. The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone, her heart breaking into pieces. She's right, Elena said numbly. This is about you. Luca's in danger because of you. Nico looked up from his papers, his face carefully blank. Yes. And you care about us. That's why she took him. Yes. Elena should have been angry, should have blamed him for dragging them into his violent world. Instead, she felt something else entirely. You care about us, she repeated softly. More than I should, Nico admitted. More than is safe for any of us. Elena walked to his desk and looked down at all the papers covered with maps, photos, phone numbers. What's the plan? You're not going to that warehouse. Yes, I am. Elena? That's my little brother. Elena's voice rose. I've been taking care of him since he was 2 years old. I promised our parents I'd keep him safe, and I'm not breaking that promise now. Nico stood up, his eyes dark with something that might have been fear. If you go there, they'll kill you both. If I don't go, they'll kill him anyway. Elena lifted her chin. At least this way, I have a chance to get him out. What about after? Even if you save him, Viviana won't stop. She'll keep coming until we're all dead. Elena had thought about that during the long, terrible hours of waiting. Then stop her. Elena, you said you couldn't save your wife and daughter. Here's your chance to save someone else's family. Elena stepped closer. Stop her, whatever that means, however you have to do it. Stop her so she can never hurt anyone again. Something shifted in Nico's expression. The careful control slipped, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. I can't lose you too, he said quietly. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. This powerful, dangerous man was scared, not of bullets or threats or rival families, but of caring about someone and losing them. You won't, Elena said, though she wasn't sure she believed it, but Luca needs me to try. Nico stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. Rafa, he called, change of plans. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Elena felt like she was getting ready for war, which maybe she was. Nico gave her a tiny earpiece and a GPS tracker disguised as a button on her jacket. We'll be listening to everything, he explained. The second you have Luca, you get out. Don't try to be a hero. What about Viviana? Leave her to me. Elena met his eyes and saw cold determination. She didn't ask what he was planning to do. Some things were better left unknown. At 11:30 p.m., Elena stood by the front door, ready to leave. Mrs. Donatella hugged her tight. Bring that sweet boy home, she whispered. I will. Nico walked her to the car. In the darkness, he looked even more dangerous than usual, like a predator preparing to hunt. Remember, he said, get Luca and get out. Everything else is my responsibility. Elena nodded. Then before she could lose her nerve, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Thank you, she said, for caring about us. Nico's hand touched her face gently. Come back to me. The warehouse district was dark and empty. Elena parked where she'd been instructed and walked toward the building, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone for miles could hear it. The warehouse door was open. Elena stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. Luca, she called. Elena! His voice came from the far corner. Elena ran toward the sound and found her little brother tied to a chair, tears streaming down his face. It's okay, Elena whispered, working at the ropes. I'm here. I'm going to get you out. Touching. Elena spun around. A woman stepped out of the shadows, tall, dark-haired, beautiful in a cold way. This had to be Viviana Moretti. You came alone, Viviana said, sounding almost impressed. I wasn't sure you would. I said I would. Yes, but people lie, especially when they're dealing with people like me. Viviana smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Nico Bellanti lies all the time. Elena got the ropes loose and pulled Luca into her arms. He clung to her, shaking but unhurt. "There," Elena said. "I did what you asked. Let us go." "I'm afraid it's not that simple." More figures emerged from the shadows. 3 men, all carrying guns. Elena's blood turned to ice. "You said you'd let him go if I came." "I said a lot of things. The truth is, you and the boy are the only things Nico cares about anymore, which makes you very valuable." Viviana's smile turned cruel. "Much more valuable alive than dead." Elena held Luca tighter, her mind racing. Nico had been right. This was a trap, and she'd walked right into it. "He doesn't care about us that much," Elena said desperately. "We're just strangers he's helping." "Are you? Then why has he been moving heaven and earth to find you? Why did he call in every favor, threaten every contact, tear apart half the city looking for one little boy?" Elena's throat tightened. "Because he cares." Because losing Isabella broke something in him that Elena and Luca had somehow started to heal. "You're going to call him," Viviana continued. "Tell him you have the boy, but something went wrong. Tell him to come alone if he wants to save you." "No." "No." Viviana's eyebrows rose. "You don't have a choice." "I won't help you hurt him." Viviana nodded to one of her men. He grabbed Luca's arm and yanked him away from Elena. "Stop!" Elena lunged forward, but another man caught her. "Don't hurt him." "Then make the call." Elena's hands shook as she dialed Nico's number. When he answered, his voice was tight with worry. "Elena, do you have him?" "There's a problem," Elena said, hating herself for the words. "They're not letting us go. They want you to come." "I'm on my way." "Nico, don't. It's a trap." Viviana took the phone. 20 minutes, Bellanti. Come alone or they both die." She hung up and smiled at Elena. "Now we wait." Those 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Elena sat on the cold concrete floor with Luca in her arms, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "Everything's going to be okay," she told him. "Nico's coming, and he's going to help us." "I was so scared," Luca whispered back. His first real conversation in 6 months, and it was happening in a warehouse full of killers. "I know, baby. I was scared too. But we're together now." "Are the bad people going to hurt Nico?" Elena's heart clenched. Even after everything, Luca was worried about the man who'd shown him fish and horses and kindness. "I don't know," Elena said honestly, "but he's strong, stronger than anyone." Car doors slammed outside. Elena's pulse raced. "Right on time," Viviana said with satisfaction. Nico walked through the warehouse door alone, his hands visible and empty. But Elena could see the deadly calm in his posture, the way his eyes catalogued every threat in the room. "Let them go," he said simply. "All business," Viviana mocked. "No hello, no. How have you been since I murdered your brother?" "Your brother killed my family? I killed him. We both know how this story goes." "Do we?" "Because I think this story ends differently." Viviana pulled out a gun. "This time, you lose everything and I win." "Let the woman and child go," Nico repeated. "This is between us." "No, it's between all of us now. They matter to you, which means they matter to me." Nico's eyes found Elena's across the warehouse. In them, she saw love and regret and fierce determination. "I'm sorry," he said softly. Elena started to ask what he was sorry for, but then all hell broke loose. The warehouse windows exploded inward. Dark figures dropped from the skylights. Smoke filled the air, and gunfire erupted from every direction. Elena threw herself over Luca, shielding him with her body. Through the chaos, she caught glimpses of Nico fighting with deadly precision, Rafa appearing from nowhere, Viviana's men falling one by one. It was over in less than 2 minutes. When the smoke cleared, Viviana lay motionless on the floor. Her men were either dead or unconscious. Nico stood in the center of it all, breathing hard but unhurt. "Elena." He ran to them, dropping to his knees beside where she and Luca huddled together. "Are you hurt?" "No." Elena's voice was shaky. "We're okay." Nico pulled them both into his arms, holding them so tightly Elena could barely breathe. She felt him trembling against her. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. "You didn't. We're here." Luca pulled back to look at Nico seriously. "You came for us." "Of course I did." "Are you our family now?" The question hung in the smoky air. Elena held her breath, waiting for Nico's answer. "If you want me to be," he said carefully. Luca nodded solemnly. "I want that." Elena looked between her little brother and the man who'd risked everything to save them, the man who'd somehow become the most important person in her world. "Me too," she said quietly. 6 months later, Elena woke to the sound of laughter drifting through the bedroom windows. Real laughter, Luca's voice bright with joy. She found him in the garden with Nico, both of them covered in dirt from planting new flowers. Luca chattered nonstop about which colors should go where, his voice strong and clear. "Good morning," Nico said when he saw her, his face lighting up the way it always did. "Morning." Elena kissed his cheek, tasting sunshine and happiness. "What are you two troublemakers up to?" "Luca's redesigning the entire garden," Nico said seriously. "He has very strong opinions about roses." "Pink ones are better than red ones," Luca announced. "Everyone knows that." Elena laughed, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. This life they'd built together was nothing she could have imagined, but it was perfect in ways she'd never known perfect could be. "Breakfast in 10 minutes," Mrs. Donatella called from the patio. They walked toward the house together, Elena and Nico holding hands, Luca skipping ahead to tell Mrs. Donatella about their gardening progress. "Happy?" Nico asked quietly. Elena looked at this man who'd saved them in every way that mattered, who'd given them safety and love and a home where laughter lived again. "Completely," she said. And for the first time in her life, Elena knew exactly what that word meant. They were safe, they were loved, they were home, they were family.